Good evening. I'm Bethany Bronco with Channel 9 News at 9. I'm here with Mr. Glenn Bobby Hobbs. Glenn is a survivor of a satanic cult and is now a pastor at a local congregation. This time of year, kids may be excited for trick-or-treat, but the real trick may be in your neighborhood, at your doorstep. Mr. Hobbs, how long has it been since you renounced Satan?
In 1986, when I was coming out of my Satanist phase, I had a realization. I'd been living a lie. The church was where I needed to be.
Glenn, can you tell us why you think that Halloween is the devil's holiday?
In 1602, the Catholic Church decided to start selling indulgences, which is basically like Halloween candy. Everybody knows that the Catholic Church is actually the devil in disguise. Now, I wrote an album called Devil in Disguise. It was at first envisioned as a Satanist album, and then I turned it into a Christian album because the record label decided that Satanism was not exactly popular anymore. So part of the reason why I'm a Christian now is because it sells better records. Between you and me.
This is not just between us. This is on public record.
We have to stop our kids from going to hell. On October 1st, every year, they get the pumpkins, and they get the plastic teeth with the fake blood on it. They get the witch's hat and the witch's tits. It's like a black mass.
As a pastor, what do you think of churches that partake in the trick-or-treating?
One thing I saw a pastor do, he made a little trail of candy that went all the way from the street and went all the way into the church, and it led up to the baptismal bucket. And I saw no less than 24 kids get baptized that way. They followed the candy and they fell in the tub and they got baptized. So it's not all bad. It's holy water. It counts. Everything else they do on Halloween is an abysmal affront to God. The mission for souls is a holy mission. Halloween is just another month where I have to go to AA a lot and pretend that I read the book. Basically have to act to my whole family like I'm not going to blow up and try to wring one of the kids on my porch, wring their necks. Because that would be bad. In 1986, Dutch was trying to win a Cold War, but I was trying to win a war for kids' souls.
And
I think you should not mess with the Ouija board. It always disturbs me. It was probably around 1968. It was me and Sly Stone. And we were trying to talk to Bobby Kennedy. He had just been shot. A lot of our friends said that was a little insensitive. We should not have done that. So soon after Bobby Kennedy got shot, but this was 1968. And the thing is, in 1968, you could be a little insensitive. We talked to Bobby Kennedy, and he told us that Sirhan did not shoot him. That it was, in fact, is going to come as a shock to a lot of people, it was Mama Cass from the Mamas and the Papas.
Glenn, wait, no one's ever heard this before. You're breaking the news.
Bobby's been drinking a little bit. I am not in witness protection. I'm a real human being. Candy corn is an affront to God. Unfortunately, Christianity is not a whole lot of fun. They don't let you eat candy. They don't let you dance. They don't let you sing rock and roll. They don't let you hang out at the skate park smoking cigarettes. Those are all things that I like to do quite a bit.
Glenn, it sounds like you may miss the old days.
I don't give a damn what anybody says. I'm a believer in God.
Mr. Hobbs, is that a marijuana cigarette?
Oh.
You do realize this will be broadcast on television.
For all you Christians out there, keep it between the lines. Don't ever riot in a major metropolitan area.
Well,
but if you do,
this has
make
been
sure it's
Bethany
on
Bronca.
Halloween and
Thank you,
make
Mr.
sure
Hobbs,
that
for your
there's lots of fake blood.
interesting
There's a lot of
perspective.
misinterpretation of. At the end of the day, it all comes down to Punkins. Not a lot of people know this, but back then, what you could do was you would get a cassette, and the last track on the album would be 20 minutes long. And you could fast forward all the way to the very end and hear some secret message. And I left a secret message at the end of Devil in Disguise. And that is, the Punkins ain't what they say.
Y'all carve your little pumpkins, you are basically inviting Satan's little messengers right into your household. Yeah, that's right. Pumpkins are of the devil. A jack-o'-lantern, basically an Amazon Alexa to send messages right to hell.
What I'm about to tell you is a tale of intrigue, mystery, and suspense all rolled into one. The year was 20 and 24, and I'd thrown what could quite possibly be termed the worst party in history. Everybody left in the first hour. I mean, not a single person left in the house. Sitting on the couch, watching Suspiria by myself, feeling the taste of a social defeat, I got a ring from my old buddy Perry. He said, "Man, if you're still going, I'll come by. Sorry I've been working late." I said, "Perry, come on by, man. I'm just hanging out." So Perry came by. I said, "Perry, pull up a chair, man. Let's have us a little cocktail and some pizza pie. And let's read from Daniel Cohen's Curses, Hexes, and Spells," which, to my knowledge, is the only children's how-to guide to witchcraft. We sit there, and after some light banter and some investigation into Daniel Cohen's family, who it turns out whose daughter tragically lost her life in the Lockerbie bombing, we decided to get into a little Halloween mischief. And that, in retrospect, was our first mistake. I had a Ouija board out in the barn, and frankly, that's where it should have stayed. I insisted, though. So we go outside because I'm still superstitious enough to not want to conjure anything right where I lay my head, even if I don't necessarily believe in it. And so we go outside, I wipe down the little outdoor table, and we get the Ouija board out. And we no more than got the Ouija board out till we heard this incessant beeping noise. And when I say incessant beeping noise, I'm not talking about the intermittent chirp of a alarm battery at the end of its life. I mean, this thing was going. It just wouldn't stop. I said, "Perry," I said, "what the hell is that?" He goes, "I don't know, man." I was like, "Is it coming from the neighbor's house?" And I kind of strolled over toward the neighbor's house to see if it was coming from there. It wasn't coming from there. Dipped inside to make sure it wasn't the carbon monoxide alarm. Wasn't that. I said, "Perry, where is that?" He said, "Man, I think it's coming from inside the barn." Grab my keys, I go out to the barn, and we're having a look around, and in the corner is some old waterlogged boxes, some cinder block, and some wood, but that beeping noise is coming from that corner. And in this little waterlogged box is nothing but an old, sort of rusted paint can and an old fire alarm that's losing its mind. And so I pick up the alarm, I look at it, and the thing had expired in 1986. And I look at Perry, and Perry is just stone-faced. He says, "Man, I think we've made contact." I couldn't make any sense of it. There was a battery in it, but one of the terminals was so corroded it wasn't even connecting anymore. So like the power wasn't coming from the battery. It wasn't hooked in, hardwired into the wall, so it wasn't that. It was just beeping, beeping, beeping. So I take this brittle old fire alarm and I slam it probably 4 or 5 good times in the driveway before it even stops and breaks. What the hell happened here? You know, and the barn, all there was in there is like a dog cage with a charred dog bed in it. A couple weeks after that, my AC unit goes out, and I call the landlord, who, by the way, is a creepy bastard. Real weird guy. I mean, sometimes I catch him going through my trash bins. It's really strange. So I say to him, Glenn Bobby, my AC's gone out. Can you help me out here? Can you send somebody over to take a look at it? And I heard back from him about 3 months later. He said he'd get right on it.
After the 2008 financial crisis, I decided to stop being a man for the Lord and become a lord of the land.
So when he finally shows up to fix the air conditioner, I tell him about the alarm in the barn, and he gets this very sober look on his face. All of a sudden he says, "You stay out of that goddamn barn," in that weird voice he does. So to this day I have, but I have to ask, what the hell is wrong with this house?
Our musical guest tonight, blowing in from parts unknown, is Frank Hurricane.
I used to live in a spot called Johnson City, Tennessee. The local shrimps call it Johnson Shitty. You know, there was all kinds of wild stuff going on around there. Had a mystical friend, the epileptic prophet, Nostradamus, aka Nasty Nate. He would have grand mal seizures all the time, just wiling out in the spot, busting his head against the mystical floor and whatnot, and tables. You have to grab him and he'd be foaming at the mouth and wiling. And he'd just pop up, bust out a bowl of some top cheese, maybe a Holy Steel Reserve or something, he'd be good to go. Cruise on. Doctors would check him out. They couldn't identify the type of mystical epilepsy that he had because he actually was a true psychedelic prophet. He claimed to be possessed by a demon from the Old Testament. And he would see mystical visions, and everywhere he lived was haunted as a motherfucker. He carried the most haunted vibes with him wherever he went, essentially. And his apartments were haunted places. And I spent lots of time in them growing up. Really twisted spots. He had this one apartment at this dead end out in the back of ETSU, East Tennessee State Pubiversity. And it was a haunted ass portal to hell. My boy did salvia up in there one time and saw the demons come out. And I seen the demons come out in that place. But, you know, you had to be high as a motherfucker or just really tuned into some crazy stuff to see some of these things that the prophet Nostradamus was getting into. Otherwise, you'd just say, this is just a mentally shriveled, kind of twisted ass, unfortunate shrimponaut. But really, he was on some crazy tip, and he was an epileptic prophet. And he had this new apartment that he moved into. And the word on the streets was it was the scariest spot he had ever lived at, that the demons were really out in that spot. Made the spiritual shed look like nothing. And I had a feeling it was crazy, but I didn't know how crazy it was really gonna get. You know, I'd never been there yet, but I'd heard some legends. So I was on a tour with a group of some shrimps of the Caucasian persuasion, if you know what I'm saying. They was complaining about sleeping on floors. They were complaining about having to eat pizza and Mexican food for every meal. And I wanted to scare the living bejesus out of these honkies. So I told them, tonight when we rock Johnson's shitty Tennessee, after we rock the haunted acoustic coffee house and play one of the worst shows that you will ever play or ever experience in your entire life, then we are spending the night inside Nasty Nate's portal to hell. And everybody was like, whatever. The whole day I'm hyping it up. I'm like, you guys are fucked tonight. You're gonna quit touring after tonight. You thought the pizza and Mexican food for every meal was bad? Wait until you see the devil himself tonight. Wait until the demons are screaming and swimming in semen. Wait until that shit is really popping off. And they were like starting to get a little scared after a while. And then we got to Johnson City and they saw the crazy ass fucks that lived around there and they started realizing tonight might be real. And then they played probably the worst show any of us have ever played in our entire lives at the Spiritual Acoustic Coffee House. Rest in peace, that place closed. I tried to fight the entire basketball team. I went straight edge my senior year of high school because I was dating a mystical Pentecostal girl. She wanted me to stop smoking weed and drinking beers. And so I did it my senior year of high school. I went straight edge. And I only listened to 9 Inch Nails. And I had a pair of brass knuckles and an airsoft pistol underneath my driver's seat. And I was ready to rage, and I tried to fight the Caucasian-ass basketball team at my high school. And I said, "We fighting!" And I tried to do that behind the Acoustic Coffee House. Now, of course, there was no brawling. It was a peaceful meetup, very spiritual. And the water boy saved the day, essentially, a guy who looked like he was old enough to have raised all of us. But, you know, he was our age. He was just mystical. The Acoustic Coffee House was a wild spot, and that's where the motherfucking shit went down. And after that horrific existential crisis of a show, I said, guys, get ready. We go into the portal to hell. Now me, I'm thinking to myself, I've hyped this place up so hard. There's no way it's gonna deliver. There's no way it's gonna be as haunted as I've said it's gonna be. There's no way we're gonna see demons tonight, literally. Well, I was wrong because the way I hyped it up, this shit was way crazier. We pull up in our car, we get out. I said, guys, get ready for the portal to hell. Second I said it, psychedelic middle-aged woman comes running down the street. One of her eyeballs has popped out the motherfucking socket. It is hanging by a mystical tendon. And I said, what the fuck? She goes, help me, I am in hell! And I said, told y'all motherfuckers. But I was scared, I was really scared. I was terrified because I could see her eyeball legit hanging out the socket. Blood was spraying, it was off the chain. Then she ran off in the bushes. I called the cops because she goes, call the police! I'm in hell! I called them and then she ran off. I don't know, they called me later on my number and I said, guys, please leave me alone. That woman ran off into the woods, I don't know what's going on. They said, thank you. We opened the front door to this haunted apartment building. I say, you know, it's one of those mystical apartment buildings you pull up inside and then there's like apartments and stairs that go off from the main chamber. There was some strange dude under the stairs. He was not looking good. I didn't even speak to him. And I say what up to everybody. We going up the holy stairs. The hounds of hell are howling. You can hear them. And I knew they was some wild German shepherds up in this apartment, but they were howling worse and more haunted howls than I've ever heard them make. And I'm like, damn, that dog sounds, something's going on up in there. We run up the stairs, banging on the door. Nasty Nate, the epileptic prophet himself, opens the door. Inside, there was 3 things that really caught my eye, essentially. There was a couch. Upon the couch was the most girthed out couple I have ever seen in my life. Betwixt the 2 of them, it was probably 17 hundo pizzowns. And they was fucking. And they were covered in fleas. The fleas in this apartment were the worst I've ever seen. The fleas were hopping all over these mystical, writhing spiritual bodies. I could see the fleas without my glasses, and those fleas were off the chain. There was a coffee table. They're fucking, ground is shaking. It's off the chain. The crazy noises. This dog is going berserk. Of course, that fool is covered in fleas. There's a coffee table. Upon it are 2 objects, 2 machetes, crossed across each other, some ritualistic fashion. And then there's a strange office desk in the corner with an old Windows computer. and it's blasting out of these mystical, you know, the classic motherfucking speakers we all had. It's blasting some demonic children's choral music from somewhere in like Eastern Europe or Czech Republic or some shit. But kids and shit. I'm like, what the fuck? And Nasty Nate says, guys, be quiet or I'll kill you. And I knew that these Caucasians I was touring with were scared to death, because I was. They were shivering, dog. And they laid down on the floor amidst the fleas and didn't make a peep. They just laid there. Threw like sleeping bag, mummy bags around their heads and shit, and just disappeared from the world itself. I opened up the closet. My boy was in there from back in the day, but I couldn't recognize him. He looked like a scene from Candyman. He was covered in bugs. Could barely make out his face. I said, is that Ryan? He goes, ah! I said, damn, this is a haunted portal to hell. They were not lying. The choral music, ah! I was like, what the fuck is going on? And I went to sleep in Nasty Nate's floor because we just wanted to talk and stuff. So I laid in the floor of his place. And that choral music went all night. And at about 6 in the morning, the choral music turned off. Metallica's Inner Sandman came on. And then it went back to the haunted choral music. We rolled out the next morning. Some of those people never played music again. The rest of them, most of them, never toured again. It was a life-changing, haunted place. And that's what this next song is about. This song called, If I Stay There Tonight, I Know I'll See a Ghost. If I stay there tonight, know I'll see a ghost. If I stay there tonight, know I'll see a ghost. The vibes that I felt rolling by, Lord, you know they got me high. Yeah, if I stay there tonight, know I'll see a ghost. I had some scary thoughts while driving down that road. I thought about some things while driving down that road. The ghostly face against the glass, screaming about times gone past. Yeah, if I stay there tonight, know it might be my last. Tonight, know I see a ghost. If I stay there tonight, know I see a ghost. The vibes that I felt rolling by, Lord, you know that got me high. Yeah, if I stay there tonight, know I see a ghost. Yeah, I know I see a ghost. Yeah, I know I see a ghost, yeah.
What the hell's wrong with this house?
What the hell's wrong with this house? What the hell's wrong with this house?
As a matter of fact, There is something wrong with this house. The year was 1986. Oliver North was running around in the jungles with the Contras and sending the guns to Iran. Cyndi Lauper's True Colors was burning up the radio charts. The satanic world was about to see Bobby's True Colors. At that time, we were called the Hounds of Hell, or the Hellhounds, or some other such name that Satanist cults like to give themselves in the 1980s. We needed someone with a virgin son, and Jesse's boy was the only one who fit the bill. Now, to get into this secret society, you had to recite a poem. I mean, I guess you could call it a poem. To me, it sounded more like the liner notes to Uriah Heep's 1972 album, Demons and Wizards. We rang him up 3 days before, and we taught it to him.
Hello, Will. You've been chosen. I'm Mr. Mercer, the Grand Warden of the Lodge. You see, that's a fancy way of saying I'm the point of contact for new initiates to our young men's order. We do have a large alumni network, including everybody from titans of industry all the way down to normal everyday people like you and me, Will. I just have a few short questions for you, Will. First question, Will. Have you ever used drugs or alcohol? Good boy. Have you ever been with a girl? Or a boy? Very good, Will. We don't accept unclean boys into the order. Now listen very carefully, Will. You'll have to repeat this to us during the ritual in order to receive your reward. The Godfather, the great mystery, goes like this. I found myself without morals where it all began. Looking on the place where we all want to live, I stopped to see forever.
I hate the uninitiated throng,
and I want them off.
Behold, how good and perfect it is for us to dwell together in unity. Initiate, are you in possession of the great mystery?
I am,
Will you give it to me?
only in the manner in which I received it,
Which is?
through the recitation and alternately.
If you're asking me, I thought the mass were pretty cool. And Jesse's boy wasn't the only virgin that day, as it was also Jeff's first time officiating the ceremonies. And to be honest, everybody could probably tell. Now, the ritual was supposed to be largely symbolic, but Jeff, being the man that he is, took it a little bit literally. You see, we put Jesse's boy in a dog cage, and he was supposed to be burned alive, symbolically. Problem was, Jeff missed the memo on the symbolic part. Things got a little loose. Picture this. You're a little loaded on Quaaludes, and all of a sudden, you're drinking out of a dog bowl. The night could go anywhere. And it did. Jesse's boy died that day, along with several others. And by the time the Quaaludes worn off, we couldn't even feel the heat coming off of the barn. The next morning, I woke up and rode out of bed, and all the hairs on my arms and legs and head were completely singed off. I wish I could tell you that I gave my life to Christ after that ill-fated night. But instead, I spent about 3 months wandering the planet, trying out all the world's major religions, until I finally found the only religion in which any money could actually be made: Christianity. Well, that was a fucked up night. And I guess it answers the age-old question of who let the dogs out. Once again, it's Frank Hurricane.
I was playing a show up in Washington State. And we rocked at a psychedelic spot, and this dude, the opener, the local shrimp, he started singing songs and telling stories about getting bestial with dolphins. I said, damn, that's off the chain. To quote my man Danny, Monster Cruise, rest in peace. bestiality is my reality. So I was vibing with them tracks. And the dude, turns out this guy was so psychedelic that at some point he went on a psychedelic diet. Now, fuck that Ozempic. This dude ate 7 dandelions, 7 shrooms, and 7 bong hits for every day until he almost died. And they peeled him off the couch like a piece of leather, like a psychedelic leather shrimp. And they brought him to the emergency room where they pumped him back up to life. And then I guess he started playing music again and played this painted show. Everybody in the place had a cast or crutches. There was one dude who was duct taped to a rolling desk chair. People was missing limbs and stuff. I said, what is going on with this crowd? It was a strange vibe. After the bestial set, the dude goes, y'all gotta stay with me tonight. You're staying at my place. I was like, is it in town? He said, hell no, it's hours away. I said, I don't know, man. I don't know about that. And then I tried to get another place to stay, and I said, bro, we coming with you. Driving hours in the pitch black darkness of the mystical Washington mountains. Cascades, pitch black, made Twin Peaks look like child play. Coming through this place, roll up at a spot. He said, we're here. Start cruising down this mystical gravel road. In the distance, I see a light. I said, is that your place in the distance? He said, nah. I see that light. I said, what's that light? We're getting closer. That light is coming from a strange little pull-behind trailer. And in that light, it's coming from inside the trailer. And it's a naked, twisted-looking motherfucking dude, butt naked, in the light. And I said to my boy who was on tour with me, I said, dude, Big Fat Pat, the jewel eye. I said, dude, what's going on? You see that? And he goes, dude, I see it. It's a naked dude. I said, yeah, I see that. And he goes, dude, he's staring into my soul. I said, what? I said, who the fuck is that? An old boy in the back seat who was the, the bestial dolphin shrimp, he goes, oh man, that's old Strokey. I said, what the fuck kind of place you bringing us to? Old Strokey? Who the hell is that? He goes, he's a clown. Performs regularly in Dubai. I said, in Dubai? What kind of Illuminati clowns you got hanging in this piece? What kind of Masonic clowns you got going up in this motherfucking backwoods trailer? Butt naked in the middle of the night, staring into my boy's soul. He said, that's old Strokey. I said, is he cool? He said, I don't even know. I said, wow. We pulled off, we chugging some cheap-ass brewskis, trying to black out it by this mystical quarry and stuff with water inside it. And this dude shows up, he said, a lot have died here. I'm like, what? Why you gotta tell me that? We're sitting there, chugging brews. The bushes are rustling. I look over, it's old Strokey, butt naked. Edge of the trees, some bamboo, looking out. Just checking, making sure we're drinking enough, I guess, or something. I said, hell yeah, old Strokey. He didn't say nothing. I've never spoken to old Strokey other than just that. I said, dude, it's getting late and the vibes are crazy. Can we crash somewhere up in this psychedelic place? And the dude goes, yeah, man, you can crash up in this mystical spot over here. But there's 2 rules. I said, what are they? He said, no shoes allowed inside. I said, dog, no problem. I rock them mystical Crocs. I said, what's the second rule? He said, there's a dog inside. I said, a dog? Hell yeah, I love motherfucking dogs. He said, no, dude, you don't understand. This is a strange dog. I said, hell yeah. He said, whatever you do, do not look the dog in the eyes. I said, okay. I know some wild pit bulls and shit that are like that. You don't want to look them in the eyes, you know what I'm saying? I know some wild corgis I've seen. You don't want to be looking in the eyes. Some mystical German shepherds, all kinds of dogs, mystical Punkins and whatnot. You don't want to be looking them directly in the eye, or else, you know, they might try to bite you or something. Maybe try to get bestial with you or something. But I didn't understand exactly what was going on with this dog until I met it. We go up inside, mystical dog. I look it directly in the eyes. The dog had human eyes. And I said, oh my motherfucking God. And I could tell directly that it was a human soul ritualistically trapped somehow inside this mystical ass dog. Some haunted shit that they'd been doing out there in this orgiastic commune type of place with old Strokey and all these other motherfuckers out here. And I looked at my boy Pat July. I said, did you look the dog in the eyes? He said, the dog has human eyes. And I said, oh my God, it does. We petted that dog and it seemed kind of normal, but it was not normal. And we went to sleep that night, a strange bunk bed. In the middle of the night, some strange jugglers and clowns came in, performed some weird rituals. I pretended I was asleep, which is really the way to go for me in those holy situations. And they rolled out, and I woke up in the morning. I was rolling through the spot, and I had my Crocs on. And somebody came at me, and they were going berserk. You got shoes on! Ah! And I took them off. I took those Crocs off. The dog came out, was looking wild as fuck. I said, guys, we got to get out of here. We hopped in that car, that mystical hurricane mobile, psychedelic spiritual Hyundai. We peeled out of that motherfucker quicker than you've ever seen a shrimp. It was a holy and haunted evening. This song called the Sneedville Blues. Well, I went up to Sneedville in my whip, had myself a psychedelic trip. Ain't no place like Sneedville, Tennessee. I did say Yeti powder, popped a couple of pills. Sneedville's full of them holy thrills. Spiritual river, won't you help me ease my mind? Oh, Austin river flow, Sneedville blues can't take my soul away. Ooh-wee. Well, that town's as corrupt as can be. I had a guy named Cricket, he was Cricket OG, born and raised in Sneedville, Tennessee. He said you can't trust nobody up in that place. Everybody packing in them trees is laced with that mystical powdered PCP. Oh, Austin river flow, Sneedville blues can't touch my soul. No. Ooh, holy mountain wind, yeah, you my best friend. You set me free and easy. Truck in the middle of the night, in a deep dark island, neath the pale moonlight, laying back, listen to a country song. Had a gasoline fire, old boy fell in. Covered in plastic, got that only second skin. Sneedville, you know, you're off the chain. Oh, Holston River flow. The Sneedville blues can't take my soul away. Ooh-wee. Holy mountain breeze, you set my soul at ease, and you set me free from the city. But them Sneedville blues can't get me. Them Sneedville blues can't get me. Them Sneedville blues can't get me. Oh, them Sneedville blues, they can't get me. No. Love you, love you. Woo. Happy Halloween, baby.